Well, I thought I'd covered every subgenre of slasher film you can imagine. Would that be a subgenre since slasher is a subgenre? But yeah, anyway, I guess there's also the slapstick comedy slasher. Let's review 1982's Pandemonium and rest in peace, Paul Reubens. Pandemonium stars Carol Kane, Judge Reinhold, and is directed by Alfred Soule. What's up, guys? Welcome to another patron request. This review is for Jeff Faust. He recommended this movie from 1982 called Pandemonium. He said, I think you'll dig it. It's a comedy with slasher vibes, and if you like movies like Airplane, you know, and Naked Gun, stuff like that, then that's pretty much what this is.
When do you think the killer will strike next?
Thanks for the ride. I'll see you at the end of summer.
You didn't buy a round trip ticket, did you?
Yes, I did.
He's right. It's definitely what that is. And so it's going to be fun kind of deciphering this movie. There's not much to decipher. It doesn't take itself seriously at all, okay? It's really just making fun of the horror tropes at the time. And at this time, the slasher craze was in full effect. You couldn't look left or right without bumping into four of them, okay? And so I completely get what this movie was after. And by the way, before we jump into this review, this is one of those rare movies that only has a VHS release. And of course, that's out of print, right? They don't distribute VHS movies anymore, unless it's just like a niche type deal. But yeah, there is no DVD, Blu-ray, 4K, none of that for this movie, okay? So for me to even watch this movie, by the way, no streaming. You can't find this movie on streaming anywhere. So it was so hard for me to figure out a way to watch this movie. I guess it wasn't hard, but yeah, it's on YouTube. The shittiest quality you could possibly imagine. It's a direct rip from the VHS, I'm guessing.
Now, Glenn, remember, when you're away at camp, don't ever touch yourself or you'll go blind.
Son!
But it looks like somebody ripped it from one of those, you know those VHS tapes where you could like tape 3 movies like you did back in the 80s? It looks like it took it off of that, all right? Because it's like really bad quality. And let's give you a very loose, quick plot synopsis. And I say loose because, again, this movie doesn't take itself that seriously at all. I mean, let's put it this way. I think there's 6 characters in this movie and they all rhyme with Andy.
Mandy. Candy.
Randy, Andy, Glenn.
I think it's a spoof of really just the slasher craze in general, but if you had to like hone in on anything, even though this isn't a slasher, Carol Kane plays this character, Candy, and you know, she's got like telekinetic powers, even though she like shoots red laser beams out of her eyes, and she's supposed to be like the Carrie type of character. There's a scene at the beginning of the movie where they're making a joke about dirty pillows, and there's literally a guy holding a dirty pillow.
Those aren't dirty pillows, Mama. They're breasts.
Not those. Those are titties. Those are dirty pillows.
And it's kind of a play off of Who's on First, one of those type deals, you know, from, I think that was Abbott and Costello, something like that. But I guess there is this killer because back in 1963, I guess we'll call him the Javelin Killer. And he, now picture this, he pulls the javelin out of this closet. Caution, javelin inside, I don't know, but he grabs the javelin out of this closet, throws it down the hallway, it goes out the window, and then over the football field, and then through 5 cheerleaders, you know? So it's like a shish kebab kill. And it's just the most ridiculous thing you can possibly imagine, intentionally. And so later in the movie, that's what's happening. This killer is going around and killing these people in the most ridiculous fashion. Now, as far as like trying to decipher what any of these characters, like what their motivation in this movie is, what they're doing, you almost can't, just because it's almost like a collection of setups for jokes. How can we make like a slapstick airplane type? I would call it almost like, if you want to compare it to something like today, you know the character Drax in Guardians of the Galaxy? He has this thing where he takes everything literally. And there were so many jokes back after like Airplane came out where they would have these literal jokes, you know? Like in Airplane when the woman says, like, I speak jive, and then she starts talking jive to the black guy on the plane.
It's your mofo butter laying me to the bone, jacking me up. Tight me.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Cuddy say can't hang.
Oh, stewardess, I speak jive.
Oh, good.
Just hang loose, blood. She gonna catch up on the rebound on the med side.
But in Airplane, all the jokes really landed, and they were really funny, and there was a great setup for them. There was a good amount of wit to a lot of them, even though they were directly on the nose.
Johnny, what can you make out of this?
This? Well, I could make a cap, or a brooch, a pterodactyl.
I guess we'll get into the cons, but not so much with this movie. Now, this movie does have a bevy of big stars from the time. You got the guy who played Jimmy Olsen in Superman, of course, Carol Kane. Judge Reinhold, who is sporting a blonde hairdo. Maybe that's because he did Fast Times at Ridgemont High, I think, right before this. And so they didn't want to confuse the two, which I don't know how you would confuse the two. But everybody's like on this cheerleading crew. Now, also, originally this movie was going to be called Thursday the 12th. And it came out a year after Saturday the 14th. And I remember watching Saturday the 14th. I don't remember anything about that movie at all. And I know it's on Shudder now, too. I've never went back to rewatch it. But I remember having a good time with it back in the day. But I mean, this was freaking, 35 years ago, the last time I watched it. And they were, of course, trying to capitalize on the Friday the 13th craze, right? And so then they were going to make this movie called Thursday the 12th. And eventually they changed the name of it to Pandemonium. There's a very young Phil Hartman in here. And the late Paul Reubens. I guess the late Phil Hartman, too. They were a part of this comedy group called The Groundlings. That's what Phil Hartman was in before he jumped onto Saturday Night Live. He only has like one small scene in this. But Paul Reubens has a big part. He's part of the, I guess, detective team that is investigating these murders that are happening. And he's got this guy, is it Howdy Doody? I can't remember the name of the guy with the horse that's got the red getup on. They even have it at Islands of Adventure over at Universal Orlando. Always gets his man, that guy. I can't remember his name. I haven't looked it up, but yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I'll probably have a picture of it here too. Paul Reubens stands out though. I think he's really funny in this, even though he's not in it that much. But I think this was before Pee Wee Herman too, and you can definitely see the seeds of that character in this, especially that iconic laugh that he had.
What am I supposed to do with all this leftover stew and potatoes? I'm gonna have to freeze it. You like leftovers, but His Highness, no, he can't eat leftovers. Johnson!
So I think it's fitting that Jeff asked me to review this movie, given that Paul Reubens just passed away recently. So I can kind of dedicate it to him too. But as with all the slashers around this time, you also had these teen sex romp comedies, like Porky's, Last American Virgin, Private School. It even bled into your PG fare, like Just One of the Guys, stuff like that. I guess it was a good time to be alive in the 80s because I just reveled in these two subgenres. I loved slasher movies and I loved those 80s teen sex romp comedies. But this movie, I think one of the problems it has, actually there's quite a few problems this movie has. Let's jump into the cons, okay? If you take the slapstick comedy side of it, it doesn't compare to movies like Airplane and even Naked Gun. I wasn't laughing that much because I thought the comedy was a little bit amateur. Let's just say maybe like a 12-year-old wrote this movie. That's what it feels like, okay? It doesn't feel like there was any wit to the comedy. There are a couple funny moments for sure. I do like when they go to the pie shop, the diner or whatever, and he says, I'll take the Three Stooges pie, and she slams his face with the pie.
Could I have the Three Stooges pie, please?
Couple moments in there that really had me rolling, but for the most part, I didn't find it that funny. It's a little charming though. I mean, it's always nice to see Carol Kane in movies too. I just love her delivery, her voice even.
I'm gonna have fun. I'm gonna sleep with truck drivers and get crabs, and I'm gonna finally get to use my diaphragm.
So you got that. Now, as far as teen sex comedies, there's really not much of that in here at all. It's a PG movie. And it's like a full-on PG movie. Although there is one scene with this character, Mandy, who hurts her foot. And I'm not even going to go into how ridiculous that scene was and how she hurt her foot. But Judge Reinhold, he's talking about cheerleaders to her while she's in the bed. And then, how do I put this? He ends up having an accident on himself. That's the best way I can put it. I think you know what I'm talking about. Wow. And I'm like, that's why he had it? I don't know. That's very weird. Very weird stuff in this movie for sure. And then, getting down to the slasher stuff, there's some fun moments in there. Like this character, Candy, I think. She's looking in the mirror, the vanity mirror. There's like 18 freaking tubes of toothpaste in there. And he comes out of it with a drill, because that's like his main weapon, the drill. But it's a drill with a toothpaste bit on it. And so she gets killed by toothpaste. That's what you're dealing with the slasher kills in this movie, all right? But overall, guys, I will say, I think there's some fun to be had. I think it would help if I watched a better quality version than the one I watched. Because let me just say, this might be the worst quality movie I've ever reviewed, as far as like the version that I watched. So that might help too. There is definitely some charm to it for sure, especially given that it came out in '82. I love that era of cinema, and you'll see little moments of that in this for sure. So I'll give it just a straight up like humdrum. So have you seen Pandemonium? Most of you, I'm wagering, probably haven't heard of this movie. But let me know down in the comments if you have. Looking forward to hearing them. It's on YouTube right now. I'll put a link in the info box so you can watch it if you want. It's literally like, I think 80 minutes long. So it's not like painful or anything. I still had a decent time watching it. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day. And on Fridays, we do Free for Fridays. Follow me at Drumdums and on my socials. Support me on Patreon. Buy me a coffee. And guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Drumdum out.